Well, again, everybody, this is Steve. Coming to you. Coming to you with another video. I'm trying something a little different this time because the way I was doing it before, with the full screen recording, was causing problems, and I was just kind of sucking it up and dealing with it. But I'm trying it a little bit differently with a slightly different screen capture. So if you see this having kind of a weird rectangle shape, then just bear with me. I'm trying things. Also, as a quick note. This one is going to be the last of the overview for the simple fact that I've covered pretty much all the important stuff. There's other smaller elements of the galaxy, and there's some things that I could probably cover that aren't in the wiki, which I probably should put them in there. If you have any questions, you want something covered in more detail, let me know. I'll happily put it in the wiki because I can, it'll benefit you guys, but it'll also benefit me in the long run by taking it out of my brain and into print form because my brain at my age tends to leak. So I have to go and look up stuff and find out what it was because I had forgotten about it, which like I say, without my wiki I would really be in trouble because I would forget all my own stuff. I mean, when you're 21, 31, even 41, that's not a problem. When you hit 51, the brain just kind of goes out of warranty and everything kind of starts going downhill from there. But anyways, picking up where I left off at, I wanted to circle back to this real quick. Was Sarah, because after I finished recording, I happened to remember something that you guys will get a chuckle out of. This isn't something that's actually official canon or anything like that. It actually comes from talking with some friends, and there's kind of a running joke going on between with the relationship between Mike and Sarah. And the joke is, that they're asking who's the one actually robbing the cradle. Because, Mike is, when they finally start, officially start dating, Mike's 125, but she's 18,000. But yet, she's only an 18-year-old in human years, and he's 25. So, like I say, it's just kind of a question of who's robbing the cradle. One of my friends says, yeah, both of them are. But anyways, I just thought you guys would get a kick out of that. While we're right here and I see this, I want to cover this. This is something you'll see when it mentions the different races. The different race types, these are the core 7 types of races that are in the galaxy. You have avianoids, which are any bird species that are out there. Insectoids, this is anthropods, insectoids. Basically, if it's a bug and it's sentient, it's an insectoid. Humanoids is humans. There is like the pront. The pronts are considered humanoid, even though they don't look terribly human. There are other races that are humanoid. There's obviously the Crassians and the Noetians, which are actually human. That's a long story. You'll have to read up on that. But then there's the mammalian races, like the Angolorians, the Trepidor, the Trepidor avianoid. The mammalian would be the Angolorians, the Trigarians, the Yandians, Yetish, the Gaydal. Aquanoids, that would be like the Varnock. They're the fish. They're the fish species. So it's basically any fish or aquatic species is included in that. And that doesn't mean that there aren't subgroups, but those are kind of the parent groups. Reptoid, that's like the Gaic Fawn. There's not a lot of reptoid species out there. There are some. There is like if you go up here to Rex, he's a greasy. There they are. They are a dragonoid species, but they're still considered a reptoid. And yes, if you're curious about the name, it is a pun, and it comes actually from. I mean, if you look at this here, this partially shows it, but this one shows it a lot better. It's a pun, and I mentioned this before. On the greasers from the 50s. So, but anyways, that's a reptoid. Like I say, he's the dragonoid subtype. which is, what the Greasy are. They're a Dragonoid subtype. But then you got the Xenopoids. Xenopoids are pretty much anything that doesn't fit anywhere else. Sarah would be classified as a Xenopoid because she's an energy-based life form. And their race, I don't think I mentioned this last time, but their race lives in the dimensional divide. Let's go up here and I can click on that. Okay, I don't have much on there, but there's a little explanation of what the dimensional divide is. It's basically the space between spaces. It's what some would call interdimensional space. So, covering that really quickly. Trying to kind of hustle through this one because I've only got 45 minutes and I can easily max out my 45 minutes without even trying. So, oh, and don't mind that. We're having a thunderstorm right now. It's actually kind of cool. It's raining really nicely outside. While I'm here, I'll just kind of cover this here. There's a bunch of different ships. And there's also space stations. Here's the Dawn Reaper class. This is what replaced Command 1 and Command 2. Because this is Command 1. Command 2 is identical. It's the same class of ship. I don't remember if I identified the ships in my notes, but I don't think I did. I definitely didn't in the story because I never mentioned the class. That's kind of like outside the main canon of the story, but this is what Command 1 was. This doesn't actually portray it terribly well because there's a tower that comes down from the bottom, a much bigger tower than this. So there's extensions going both ways, and then this is a lot wider, but this is the closest I could come up with. So, but then yet the Dawn Reaper replaces that, and this is what the Dawn Reaper looks like roughly. So different design. It's kind of the more ring design. If you're a Star Trek fan, you look at that and go, oh, that's kind of almost DS9 type. Not entirely. I mean, it doesn't have the big claws coming out of it and stuff, but or you could say it's an Asimov design because Asimov had similar stuff to this. But anyways, there's a bunch of interesting ships in here. Titan class, which of course was the Yavlik class. Now this is an interesting one, UEF Columbus. You hear about this a little bit. It's kind of touched on briefly in Dark Earth, and I'm going to explore that more in other books. But it's a ship connected with the United Earth Federation, thus UEF. The UEF is basically after Earthfleet, the Society's exposure, thanks to the Crassians. Well, them and Black Orchid, and I'll tell about Black Orchid in a second here, if I remember. If I don't, please somebody get on my case and I'll do it in a future video. But anyways, after being exposed through Black Orchid and the Crassians, now the Society can't hide from Earth anymore. So what they do is they kind of start stepping forward and saying, okay, we've wanted to come back to you guys and reintegrate ourselves and bring you up to our level and all this, but you guys aren't ready. That's why we haven't revealed ourselves yet, because you guys just flat out aren't ready. You're more willing to run around like a bunch of angry apes beating the snot out of each other than you are actually moving towards science and all that kind of stuff. Well, then Black Orchid and the Crassians kind of forced their hand, so now they're like, all right, fine. What we're going to do is we will help you, but we're going to start you out the same way we did. And UEF Columbus is essentially a more modern version of the original Destiny, when it had its sublight drives and stuff. The Columbus has no FTL. The Columbus, like I say, is pretty much the Destiny all over again. But again, it's not using the same technology as the Destiny had. It's using, because that technology is obsolete. It's gone. It's lost. It's in the past. It's a historical artifact, basically. So what they did was they took, since the people who are training on the UEF the UEF Columbus are gonna have to eventually step into warp drive and impulse drive and shields and all this stuff. they start them out with roughly equivalent technology. So it's like, rather than having to climb all that much higher, going from repulsion drive all the way up to impulse and everything in between and all that stuff, they kind of give them a leg up. And they're like, okay, you guys start out with this ship, you wander around, you learn how the ship works, how the technology works, you build yourself up, you learn kind of the traffic control system of soul space, because there's a lot of things that they can learn by just moving, practicing and exploring and moving around. Because some of it is practice, kind of like you put cadets through an academy. Some of that's practice. Some of that is practical, where you're going out, you've got a nice sensor array on your ship, you're going by Jupiter and you're running sensor sweeps. And you're learning and you're discovering and you're transmitting all this back to Earth, and Earth is like, wow, this is cool, And one of the other things too that happened with this here, that the United Earth Federation came about, is and then I'm not setting a date on this, but this was just something that was used in the book as a point of reference. But given to what we're seeing in real life, I see the United Nations collapsing sometime in the next couple of years. I had to put a timestamp on it, so I said sometime in 2024, because I had to have a timestamp for the book. Whether it actually collapses in 2024, I don't know. It might collapse in 2023, 2025, 2030. I don't know. But at some point, the UN is going away. That much is that much is obvious, because we're watching it crumble right now. So unless something miraculous happens, the UN's going to go away. And in my, in the Earthfleet universe, I replaced that with the United Earth Federation. And part of what, spawns the creation of the UEF, because like there's this void created by the collapse of the UN. Everybody kind of goes their own way, and then they're all, tit for tat and having pissing matches and stuff like this. And it's back to being a world where you don't have that unified political force that the UN is, which the UN's kind of become so corrupt that it's stopped doing what it's doing. And I'm not saying that to be political. I'm saying that as a matter of fact. I mean, if you read the news, if you do your research, and really that's true of any governmental organization. They'll start out all perfect and squeaky clean and idealistic, and then over time, corruption sneaks in, they collapse, they get rebooted, they come back, and they start all over again. I mean, how many nations over time have had their governments completely collapse and get totally rebooted, and they start all over again, and everything's happy hunky dory for a time, and then a couple hundred years later, or 50 years later, or however long later, corruption sneaks in and it all folds, and hit the reset button, rinse, repeat. So, anyways, that's just a matter of history. That's a matter of real life fact. So it's like I say, it's nothing political. It's just a matter of that's life. Anyways, the UEF kind of, after the events of Homeworld and Empire Rising, Earth is looking at this like, okay, this isn't just us anymore in the galaxy. This is this great big, we're inside this great big arboretum of races, if you will. I can't think of a better way to think of or to describe it. Basically, we're not alone anymore, but this is a lot more than we're not alone anymore. This is, holy crap, look at how many races are out there and how big the galaxy is. So, if you look at some of the other sci-fis, they have 3, 4, 5, maybe as many as 12 other races out in the galaxy, but they're scattered about, and they're kind of buckshot and stuff. And when Earth actually looks out into the galaxy and sees what's actually out there, it's more like going to a dance party where everybody is just shoulder to shoulder, and they're going, oh. So everybody all of a sudden gets real nice with each other and goes, yeah, let's all kind of tuck ourselves under the same umbrella, even if we disagree, so that we at least are unified in this and that we don't get ourselves wiped out. So, it's kind of this real big reality check for the people of Earth, and that's where the UEF comes in, because UEF is actually a really good organization. It's, well, at least in its current form, it's not corrupt. Now, like I was saying before with, human beings and humanity and stuff, that's going to become a thing eventually. But for right now, it's a very upstanding, upright organization at the beginning, and that's and the UEF Columbus is out there. They realize that they're the baby in the room, and Earthfleet's the big boy, the big boy, but then the galaxy is filled with really, really big giants like what's his name? I think he's with like either the DC or the Marvel universe. The Galactus, I think it is. The big dude whose head's bigger than planet Earth. It's one of those kind of things that he's or that that the galaxy is kind of like Galactus, and Earth is the big brother in the Earth. The Society and Earthfleet are the big brother in the room. So, anyways, spend enough time on that. Okay, yeah, the Hornblower is kind of another one. What was USF? Oh, okay, never mind. That's yeah, okay. So United Soul Fleet, you can read on that one. Those are not like military type vessels, like what the Columbus is. Columbus is training for the military side of things, and like the Hornblower and the Aquarius are part of United Soul Fleet, which is what Columbus sits under, but they're the civilian half of it. So, and this is the other one that's interesting too, is Society Joint Commerce Station. The Society is nice enough that they create a space station in Earth orbit that acts as kind of a halfway point between Earth and the Society. The Society's not going to let Earth just go out into, out into the solar system and into all of the Society structures and locations and stuff like that. It's the same idea. The JCS is kind of the same idea as what Pluto Station is to the rest of the galaxy. We will let you inside of Oort perimeter and later Sol perimeter, but we're not letting you inside the system. But we do want to interact with you, and we want it to be in a safe and protected way, so we're going to give you Pluto Station. So kind of that same idea. Because the Society is actually very benevolent. They want to help people on Earth and stuff. Okay, you got the Varga. I don't have... Okay, I do have a ship for that one. The Varga was Sagarg's ship. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here. Here's one that I love. Ambassador Finch's personal starship, the Kavenu. This is one of my favorite ships because this thing literally looks like a bird. Of course, you got to consider this is a bird race, they're avianoids. Their ships are going to emulate their society, and that's what this one is. And it's funny because it's not a fixed wing craft. Those wings on there actually flap, and you're like, why? Because they're birds. That's what they do when they come into land. They're like, so the ship emulates it. It's not necessarily practical. That's just what the ship does because they're birds, But the Kavenu is one of my favorite ships in the series. Let's see. That's a London longbow. Oh, here's another interesting one right here. World ships. If you've read the books, you know about these ships. These are gigantic starships that are, they're home planets in a sense for the Bajor. The TLDR on that is, at one point in time, the Bajor homeworld was threatened by a supernova. Their sun was getting ready to pop it, was getting ready to pop itself like a zit, and so they built a world ship. When you talk about the Bajor, they think big, and I think they think really, really big. And they took all their people and put them on a starship and flew it into the stars. And their goal was, okay, the ship's not very fast, but it's set up so that we can live in it. It's it's livable, it's multi-generational, and we'll just fly around till we can find ourselves a planet. Well, they never found themselves a planet. So what they decide is, after trying to find planets and going around and going around and going around and coming up with nothing, they end up deciding to just expand their people across the galaxy, so they're not all localized, for one thing. Especially after the War of the Nine, that was a big motivator not to be localized. But they just spread themselves out across the galaxy in these world ships, and there's various designs and stuff. The one that you see in Destiny's Mission is kind of a blimp-shaped world ship. Some of them are orbs, like, or planet-shaped, like the primary world ship that's the parent planet / homeworld of the Bior. Then there's other ships that are various, each ship is its own, basically its own country in a sense. So each one develops differently, and they bring in resources from outside planets, asteroid fields, just through trade and barter and whatnot like that. And they start out with a small ship, and they just start bolting stuff onto it. And then if the original ship that they were bolting onto is obsolete, they'll gut that out and build new stuff inside the ship to replace that. And the ship just keeps growing and growing. And some of them, they were planet shaped, some were blimp shaped, just because that's how the world ship ended up developing, and so on and so forth. The Bior themselves are these guys. They're essentially Minotaurs. And what I did with that one is that's kind of a nod back to the Minotaurs of antiquity and mythology. That, Minotaurs actually existed. They aren't what mythology said they were. They were actually Bior that decided to go pay Earth a visit just for kicks and giggles, and some of them stayed. So, anyways, they're one of the mammalian races. Let's go back up here again. I want to start back where I was at because I'm getting off on. Oops, wrong one. Races. Here we go. I'm getting off on too many tangents here. Okay, Alarians. The Alarians are funny because they're classified as a race, but they're not really. They're a trade organization, but they act like a single race and a single family, even though they're made up of different races and stuff. They're kind of interesting. The Alarians also in the book are mentioned because back in the 1950s, they were visiting Earth and one of their ships crash landed. Hence, why we got the alien Greys, and they're the reason. And yes, Alarian is a pun. Alarian, alien, Anyways. The Eldovians are interesting. They're a humanoid. Oh, I didn't mark that. Oops. I'll cheat and borrow his. Yes, you may cheat when you're editing your wiki. Let me think here. Oh, I just lost my clipboard. Hold on a second here. Let's do it this way. Yeah. There we go. Anywho, like I said before, if you want to do a presentation, or if you want to find stuff in your wiki that's broke, do a presentation. But anyways, the Eldovians are a humanoid race. They're bald. They actually look very human, but they're not. And they typically are the servants of the Juna, of the Sarians, of some other ones. They're a little on the despicable side. Not all of them, obviously, but most of them are. And they're a very interesting race themselves. We touched on the Angolorians. This is what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to circle back to this, because I wanted to touch on some of these guys here. This guy is one of my favorites. Is Greyfang. You meet him in book 4, and when he starts out, he's very much against humans, mostly because there's so many different races, and his people were among the races that were against humanity and soul and stuff like that. That sided with the Crassians, not directly. They didn't realize they were siding with the Crassians. They thought they were siding with the Varnock, as one of the along with the Targaryens and the Prant, if I remember correctly. As like, well, they're going to cause all this problem, so we're going to turn against them and stuff. And Greyfang meets Phylan during the time of the let's see, he meets him after the fall of the UGW and the rise of the Alliance of Sentient Worlds, or ASW. And Phylan's kind of funny because Phylan's very open to being friendly with him, but Greyfang really doesn't want anything to do with him. But then eventually Phylan wins over Greyfang because Greyfang starts realizing what's going on, and he kind of warms to Phylan, and he starts warming to humans, and he starts turning the Angolorians away from hating Earth. I mean, they don't go and start loving Earth like the Gate Von do, but they start realizing, oh, okay, yeah, it was humans that were causing the problem, but it wasn't you particular humans. It was these other humans, the Crassians. But, yeah, he ends up turning out to be this really cool dude. He's very sharp. He's wise. He's a sly old fox, even though he's a wolf. So you could say he's a sly old wolf. But he's a really instrumental character in the books, and he's very noble. So I think once you get to reading about him, you'll like him, as he actually goes out of his way at a couple points to help out Earth one way or another. Nisp is another one. He's the one that eventually takes over for Greyfang as the chief ambassador. So then Greyfang becomes a ambassador at large, which basically means you're not assigned a particular area of diplomacy. You just kind of float around and are used wherever you needed. And if you don't, you just you stand in the corner and just look good. But the people, or the Angolorian people, admire him. Excuse me. The Angolorian people admire him so much that even after he passes retirement age, they keep him around because he's such a good diplomat. And Nisp has he's a lot younger than Greyfang, and he has a lot of respect for the Elder Wolf. He'll go over to him periodically and ask him for advice, ask him for input, and well, how do I handle this situation? And I'm talking to this particular race, and they want to do such and such. What do I do with this? So, he looks up to his elders because he realizes, I'm the young dog on the block here. Yeah, I'm chief ambassador, but yeah, I don't have the experience that the other guys do, and I'm not as wise as they are. So just because I have the title doesn't mean I'm better than they are. So he's, Nisp is very humble, and that Greyfang actually appreciates that. That Nisp knows his shortfalls and knows how to deal with them, which is what a good diplomat should do. Now, as far as Angolorians go, there's one other one. This is still being developed, so I don't have anything in here. This is a placeholder. I'm still working on writing the book and canonizing things and stuff. But the general thing with this one is this is a guy called Shadow. Shadow is not his real name; it's his code name, because he's a mercenary. He's a soldier for hire, soldier of fortune, if you will. He is very noble, very thoughtful. One heck of a sniper. He's also kind of cold in some ways because just the things he's seen. He's young. He would be somebody that would basically be in their late 20s. Very highly trained, very skilled, very good at what he does, but also very emotionally wounded from all of the crazy he's had to go through. He's going to be a mercenary that's going to be part of the Delta Riders, which is... I'll cover this real quickly. This here is the Delta Star. It's a... This is the best image I could find. Eventually I'll get a better image of it, but this is roughly what the Delta Star looks like. The Delta Star is... And again, this is in development, so this may change. But the Delta Star is essentially a modified cargo transport that is used as a ship for hire for mercenaries and special forces missions and stuff. So basically, if you're a special forces team, doesn't matter the race, doesn't matter who you're from, doesn't matter what your mission is. Well, it does matter. There are some missions that they won't take, but the ship is owned by Gress Margoon. This guy right here. Anyways, he owns the ship and he hires it out, and basically takes different teams to different places as they're needed, and that allows the teams to operate without being connected directly to their official governments or organizations. So, and Earth hires him for that exact reason, because he's, that disconnects them from who their actual employer is. And people know that. They know that these people are coming from official sources, and they're soldiers for hire out doing specific missions. But the Delta Star is one of many, many, many ships like this that are used to mask who is the actual employer. This, like I say, this is still a work in progress. There's a lot of interesting characters in here. One of my favorites so far already is Moog, and yes, he is a Tiger mercenary. He's Trigarian. You've met Rex. Chamber is one of only 2 humans on the entire team. He is a Special Forces operative too from Earth. His specialty is ciphers. So, and you'll see how that comes in. And then, of course, you've met Blue before, one of the Thrawn. This guy right here, I love this guy so far, just with what I've developed. He is the ship's doctor, and he's also kind of the ship's shaman. And he is a riot, because he's got kind of this regal British feel to him almost. He doesn't speak like a British person does, but he has kind of that same feel. And he very thoughtful, very, despite being a gigantic grizzly bear, he's very thoughtful, very considerate and stuff. Makes an excellent doctor. You've met Duroth, because he's the Sarian. This is the other one. This is Flint. Flint is the... Okay, if I can zoom in on him. There we go. Flint is the captain of the mission. Gress Margoon owns the ship, but Flint is the one that's put into command on this. And Gress does that sometimes because... Well, actually, I should say he does it a lot of the time, because there are missions where he does not need to be in charge of it, even though it's his own ship. He still has final say because it is his ship. But, yeah, when a mission comes aboard, they hire the ship, and they hire Gress to take them wherever they need to and help them out and take care of medical stuff and all of that. And Pendleton hires Flint, again, code name, to lead the ship. And Flint is kind of an interesting one, because he's kind of that grumpy old grandpa / uncle type person. One of the cute sayings that I've come up with this so far is when Pendleton's talking to him, he says, "Yeah, we hired you because I hear that you're really good at wrangling unruly crews." He says, "I don't unwrangle unruly crews. I make stupid people stop being stupid." So, he's going to be that hard-fisted leader and that's exactly what this team needs, because they really, really, they don't gel well at the beginning. So Flint's really needed to bring them together, and even later on, they're going to have kind of problems staying gelled, and he's going to kind of be the cowboy that wrangles them all together and keeps them working as a team. This is Clank. This is a robotic bird, robotic bluebird in this case. He's a sentient machine, and he's one of Gress's employees. So and the funny thing is, there's kind of this little unofficial rivalry between him and Moog that's hilarious, because then Moog's over there doing cat stuff to him, like he'll come up there and paw gently at Clank. Clank's like, "Will you stop that?" And then Moog knocks him off the table like a cat would. Like, would you see what he did to me? So Clank also is a good field advisor and stuff, because he'll go with some of the away missions and help him out with stuff, advise him, and do different things like that. So that's actually a fun thing that they have there, or a fun thing going on there. Okay. Here's 2. I touched on the Yiddish before, but here's 2 of them that I didn't touch on before. I might have touched on them. This is Hector. He is part of the religious order of the Keld, which is a Yiddish religious order. They're kind of like Tibetan monks in a sense. This is Hector, and he's the leader of his particular branch or group of them. Kind of like he's like a monastery leader in a sense, but he's over charge over an entire planet. And sorry, I backed that up. I was thinking just a planet. No, he's actually the headmaster of the whole Keld. Okay. Anyways, again, this is why you have notes, because you can easily confuse yourself. He's the headmaster, and he plays an important part with Weaver's, or an important role in Weaver's Forge. Drod, he is the right-hand man to Hector, and he's Akura Kim, which, like, I may have mentioned this before, but the Akura Kim are kind of like the Shaolin monks. They're fighting monks, and Drod's fighting skill is incredible. And it's funny, too, because when you look at him in Weaver's Forge, each one of them, including him, because he's one of the three who get one of the Weaver's Forges, Rodney being another one, and this wonderful gentleman here named Jalen, he gets a Weaver's Forge, too. But what's interesting is he's the only one of the three who doesn't give his forge a name. Temporary name, but still a name. Because Drod sees the forge as a tool, not someone or something that deserves a name. So that's kind of his personality. He looks at him like, yeah, this is great. I've got this. It's a tool. It's sentient. So what? It's a tool. So he's actually very interesting because he's very much almost that cliche monk warrior type personality. And I do use cliches, but some of the cliches just fit. And they work perfectly in your it wouldn't work if you didn't have them. Okay, we've already covered Non. I like the Trepidor. I don't get to use them much, and I really should, but they're one of my favorites. Okay, here's Black Claw. And if you're wondering, wait, that's not a tiger. Yeah, he's technically kind of a panther, but if you think about the Trigarians in the same way as humans, we're all human, but we have different races within the humans. Well, the Trigarians are all tigers, or felines basically. They're they would be if they're of the felinoid subrace, and so you're going to have lions and tigers and pumas and panthers and all that kind of stuff mixed into their race, because that's kind of how it was with actual cats. The feline species, as they came up through time, genetics diverged, because they say that, like, I think it's the common house cat has genes that are like 95% that of a tiger, and they are actually related to the tiger. All cats that are on Earth come down from a common ancestor. So it makes complete sense that the Trigarians would have the same thing. But anyways, he's first Jarjan. He is a hard butt. This dude is just hardcore all the way. He's one that just will not quit. He very vindictive, very malicious, good commander, but he's a little too full of himself for his own good. Zatath, on the other hand, and this is what I was talking about, like with the Panthers and stuff. Zatath is a Trigarian as well, but he's a mercenary that works for the Trigarians, and he's actually a very good guy, very noble. You see him in First Dawn. He's out there for the greater good of his people and the galaxy, and he works a lot with Six Paws and Shanomar and others like that. And just as a quick aside, Shanomar is the general in charge of the Red Paladins. When you see him in First Dawn, he's still a field agent, a fairly young one at that. But later on, he becomes this wise old general who runs a lot of the storyline in the Earthfleet saga from the background. We done Moog. Okay. Trigarians, Varnock. Okay, you got Mobic, who is the admiral in charge of the Varnock Black Fleet. These are the guys that gave Earthfleet a butt kicking. which is funny because Earthfleet also gave them a butt kicking. Earthfleet would have been defeated by them if given enough time, but that being said, Earthfleet still ended up wiping out 3/4 of one of their 2 fleets. Because the other fleet stayed outside. The first fleet that went in got about 3/4 of their forces wiped out. So Earthfleet did a pretty decent job holding their own, even though they would have eventually been defeated. Because the Varnock Black Fleet was an elite fleet, so they're not just dealing with well, I shouldn't say they were fleets. They were 2 armadas, so there's 5,000 ships total. So they weren't just dealing with 2 armadas of enemy ships. They were dealing with 2 armadas of elite enemy ships. So given what they were up against, Earthfleet did pretty good, honestly, for some little plucky backwater fleet. And then there's like the Varnock Prophet. He plays a big role in books 1 and 2. He doesn't have a name. He's just known as the Varnock Prophet. He's kind of he's a religious figure for hire, in a sense. Because Philip, leader of the Crassians, he kind of uses and abuses people, and the Varnock Prophet's one of those that he does. I'll sneak over here real quick since we have the Crassians up. The Crassians, which I've mentioned before are humans, are actually transplanted Romans. Transplanted by these guys, the Ichigwa. And the Ichigwa they're a reptilian race. They're one of the few in the galaxy. Kind of like a monitor lizard almost in humanoid form. Or anthropomorphic form. And they're not a bad race. They're just too curious for their own good, which causes a lot of problems. And this is the funny thing, is I've had people say, that's a Borg cube. No, that's not. That's how the Ichigwa like things. Because when I came up with the idea for the Ichigwa, they had, this actually comes in from something else and actually predates the Borg from Star Trek. So no, that's not the Borg. This, like I say, this actually predates all of that, way before the Borg ever appeared in Next Generation stuff. It actually predates even my writing world. I pulled in some stuff from before I started, really getting into it when I was in the Army. So, but that like I said, that comes from way back when. And the idea of cube ships also is not original to Star Trek, just in case you wanted to know. The Borg kind of is, although the Borg, I think, is more an adaptation of other cyborg ideas from other series. So, Borg is unique to Star Trek, but the idea of what the Borg is not. That predates Star Trek. But anyways, getting off of that, the Ichigwa ended up kidnapping a village of Romans, studying them for a while, and then dropped them off on the planet of Crassia. Well, then other races were coming by, and hey, there's people down here. Let's go down and trade with them. And the various Roman empires over time saw that and were like, hey, let's take advantage of this and use this to our advantage, and grow. And they still had the very Roman mindset, that because they were not on Earth, they weren't affected by the various things that happened on Earth that eventually removed the Roman mindset and the culture and erased the Romans and stuff. Because they're out in Crassia, they're all by themselves. There's nobody there to change the Roman way of life. Now, their way did change a little, but that was more like just because of the races that were coming in from the outside. Otherwise, they stayed pretty much Roman. They're also kind of the main background villain of the Earthfleet saga. Oh, yeah, and let me get in here with Philip. Because there's actually 2 guys. There's Philip. He's kind of the Nero-type character. And then you've got his right-hand man, Licinius. He's loyal to a fault. Very smart guy. Very, very loyal, like I say, to a fault. But that's his right-hand man. Prophet. Gag Von. Of course, I've covered Vasin, Nilk. He's the ambassador. You don't see much of him. Pelk. Pelk is funny because Pelk's a teenager. I've mentioned him a couple times before. Very smart kid. Engineering genius. His girlfriend, later on wife, Taria, she ends up, she's also very, very smart. They're both technical geniuses. Pelk is more science and engineering. Science and engineering. Taria is warp, FTL, that kind of thing. So they're both good engineers. They're just specialized in different areas. Viceroy, he's funny because Viceroy, his name is because his parents wanted him to go into politics, and instead he's like this big lover of physics. So he's a physics nerd. And see, we're at 45 minutes. I'm going to run a little bit over on this one because I'm almost done, and I don't want to drag off into another video. So hang with me here. I'll be done soon. But anyways, you got Viceroy, like I say, who his parents wanted him to be in politics, so they named him Viceroy. He ended up going into physics. If you've ever watched the, not watched, but if you ever read the comic strip, what is it? Jumpstart. That's what it was. If you ever read the comic strip Jumpstart, you'll know about this because there's a character in there. I think it's named they're named Dr. Appleby. His first name is literally Doctor, because they dress him in scrubs because they want him to be a doctor. So it's kind of the same idea. Yeah, Caven's one of the other ones. He's not used very much, but he's an astrometric specialist, so he's good for like the navigational part and the star charting and all that. Tegmar, he's a counselor general, so he's kind of just like a local leader. And then you've got Sevek. He's one of the admirals. You meet him all the way through. Oh, he's a big part of all 4 of the Earthfleet Saga books. He's not in anything else beyond that, but he's very, very instrumental in a lot of the events, especially the big military engagements and stuff. Because you see him in book 1 and 2 doing a lot of military stuff. 3 and 4, he's just kind of there. What's interesting about him is he's kind of like Mosaic, is he has his own pair of armadas, and they are elite armadas. So they're not your daily drivers that do the normal protection and guarding and stuff like that in the galaxy. These are the guys. These are the big fancy well-trained sticks that go out and do the very hard jobs. So, and that's what he does. Jelk, I thought about that one. Yadith, now that's an interesting one. That is a kind of like the Bior. It's a gigantic planet of individual ships and structures and stuff that was all slapped together that makes this gigantic market. You see that in First Dawn. It's an interesting location. Vokrak is their home world. I'll let you read up on that one. Trandis is another interesting one. This is a water planet. This one I'll let you read up on this one too, but this one's kind of neat. This is not actually in the books yet, but this is going to be part of an upcoming book. So I have it in here and I have it fleshed out. I might have mentioned it in one of the other books, but I don't really go into any detail with it. But it will be fleshed out at a later time. Let's see, Kekvan, Yandians, of course. Patch is the first one you meet. He's a librarian. I used this because I thought that was, well, it's both cute, and I thought, yeah, that would fit Patch. Patch is a librarian. He's not like a high-level librarian, but he's a very good librarian. Because when you first meet him is in the second book, Destiny's Mission, because he's a local librarian. And then when Cebius is shut down, he's brought back to the home planet, where he just works in the main library, where looking over the master database, helping people do research, stuff like that. He eventually helps Lars and Vlad on 2 different missions, actually. One of them is to try to suss out the Crassians and some other things like that. And I'm trying to remember what the other mission was, but he has 2 different missions that he does with them. Loki. Now this guy's fun because this guy is actually seen in Weaver's Forge. you wouldn't think that a bunch of information nerds would have spies, but what do spies do? They collect information. And the Andeans actually hate spies. They hate the spies that are in their midst, but they tolerate them because they gather information. And it's funny, if you ever watch a librarian meet up with a Yandian spy, there's a lot of hissing that goes on between them. They come up, they see each other, and go, because they just kind of don't like each other. Well, I mean, Loki doesn't care about the librarians, but the librarians don't like him because the reason they don't like him is they consider his methods of data collection to be unethical, which is ironic because it's kind of the same way that they collect information. He just kind of takes a different approach to it. So, okay, Oh, and speaking of spies, here's Jordan. He's SIC. He's what Lars becomes later on. He predates Lars, but does basically the same job and is kind of the same person in a sense. Different guy, but I mean same. Lars is more lively, and Jordan's a lot quieter, a lot more reserved. You've met Six Paws. Trell is the boss of Six Paws. He's I'll just say this much: he's a douchebag. Anyways, Basil. If you notice here, I borrowed from this picture here. That's Basil. He is a Yandian scientist, but he's also kind of a diplomat. That is brought in, and Joel actually requests him. And the Yandians are like, yeah, okay, we're going to send somebody anyways because, they realize Earth and soul space and stuff is growing and growing and growing and becoming more and more powerful. And they've already gone through the problems that the Crassians created. And that was artificial, that mess there. But they know that if they don't kind of nip it in the bud, that will become actual. And probably, undeserved and yet kind of deserved at the same time. So they have Basil in there as a advisor and diplomat, as well as a scientist and other things like that, to kind of placate the rest of the galaxy. So they're like, okay, he's there, he's going to kind of keep him in line, he's going to advise him, we don't have as much to worry about. So that's, and Joel kind of saw that at the beginning too, Joel Pendleton. He kind of saw that at the beginning as well, and was like, yeah, if I'm going to be Grand Admiral, I need to have somebody in here that's, an intermediary so that we stay out of trouble with the galaxy. We've already been in enough trouble as it is. So, okay, Adaran, that was a small Yandian outpost, which there's a funny thing behind this, where Adaran comes from. One of the things that the Yandians do, because they're so paranoid about protecting all of their information, is they have the primary Yandian database on Dodus, their homeworld. But then they also have 5 other exact copies of that database that sit at various hidden bases around the galaxy, and those bases move. They'll stay at one location for a while, and then they'll pick up and they'll move somewhere else, and pick up and move somewhere else. And it's all of the other ones are outside of Yandian space. The reason being is if something happens and the Yandians get wiped out or invaded or whatever like that, and the master database is either captured or destroyed, they still have a copy. And it's kept up to date, and it's a little tricky keeping it up to date, but they do a pretty good job of it. And Adaran was one of those temporary bases where they kept a copy of the master database. There's even one that's kept outside of the Milky Way galaxy over in the Pegasus galaxy. So, and you actually see that in Dark Earth, that it's that database that ends up saving the master database during during that war against Dark Earth. Okay, this isn't actually okay, I don't know why that's under known worlds and locations, because that's actually just an Office of Intelligence Gathering. It's who Loki works for. But anyways, that's, well, Akaleta is kind of the Yandian equivalent to what the SIC is for Earth. The Gay Doll, you have Flake. I think I've mentioned him before. He's that Gay Doll mercenary that works for the Yandians, and he goes around with Jalan. He's Jalan's partner. So, anyways, I'll try to finish up here quickly. Back up. Back up more. And prompt. I don't have anybody yet for the prompt as far as people go because I haven't explored the prompt, but I will eventually. Let's see, was there anybody else I wanted to cover? Yeah, we're only 10 minutes over, so that's not too bad. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you guys want to learn more, the wiki's open for you to go through and read and study and all that stuff. I will try to keep it as up to date as I can. It's a little hard because it's huge. It's over 805 pages. If that gives you any idea how big this thing is. There's a lot of other cool things to study. You know, Council of Nine, battle ethos. This basically how each of the different 9 races functions. Their mindsets. You know, each one's a little unique. You know, you got unique. You got neutral space, galactic core, random police cars going by. Yeah, the fun life of living in the city. But anyways, that is. Oops, there we go. That's my presentation of Earthfleet. And like I say, this is just an introduction. I am doing a light brushstroke over everything that's there. You're welcome to, like I say, read through the wiki, familiarize yourself with it. I highly recommend reading the books because you're going to get way more than what the wiki can give you. The wiki fills in stuff that the books don't, and the books fill in things that the wiki doesn't. So you want to go through both of them. And just as a little bit of a disclaimer, if you're somebody who can't afford to buy the books, and I only sell the books for what I do because it's there to help me cover costs, because basically this is a paid hobby. It's something I do for fun, but I try to recover my costs somewhat. I don't recover them entirely because believe me, it's expensive being an author. But I do recover some of my costs. If you find out that if you are somebody or you know somebody who can't afford to buy the books, let me know. I will give you copies. I can only give you ebook copies right now because that's all I have. I'm out of print for the moment. But when the print books come around, I can give out a limited number of print books as well to people who can't afford to buy them. But in the meantime, if you got somebody that can't afford one of my books, or can't afford any of my books for that matter, or you yourself can't, don't be afraid to ask. I'm happy to give you a copy. So, because I'm not a greedy person. I will gladly give you a copy to share with others. Because to me, the biggest reward for me is that people read the books, they enjoy them, they talk about them, they share them. They get to be a part of the worlds that I've created. That is one of the things that I love so much about doing this. Anyways, going forward, I'm probably going to start covering things like how to do world building, how to do characters, how to research them, how to, just various different things that will help you become a good reader, or if you are not good reader, good writer. And if you just want to be a reader, this will give you an explanation of how we as writers, me and other writers like me, build our characters, come up with the characters, and so forth. So, basically, what is the creative process? Anyhow, thank you for sticking with me for this extra 15 minutes, and I'll catch you guys in the next video whenever I happen to get around to doing that. So, thanks.